Hello there, and welcome to another episode of The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring podcast, with your host, Agadian. That's me. I hope everybody is doing alright, and that the weather of late spring and early summer is hitting just that nice sweet spot of perfect, and not the it is muggy and wet spot that is not perfect. I wish that upon nobody. There is a big announcement for me to make in today's episode. This will be the last podcast episode in this apartment. I am moving, which is exciting, but also nerve-wracking. If everything goes right, I should be able to bring out the episode on time, meaning I have it recorded, edited, and uploaded before the month is up, to keep my monthly streak going. Duolingo and TikTok got nothing on me, bruh. But yeah, I hope the sound quality will be alright to where I move. That will definitely be something I'll have to experiment with. Probably have to buy a carpet or two, and some other things to make the echo less noticeable. Or use some sick editing skills with Zed, like a cool 90s, kids. Back to the original program. As always in this podcast series, I will analyze 5 minutes of the movie The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring by Peter Jackson, and will over-interpret, internally examine, and undersniff all the little details that I pick up. Be it movie productions and behind-the-scenes details, connections to the lore, symbolisms of words and flora, or what the clothes of the characters say about their class status, there is something for everyone here. And now, I wish you a lot of fun with this episode, number 9. The 9. We begin at minute 40 with the Sheriff Bounder's wide-open mouth, and end at minute 45 with Frodo and Sam in the woods looking over a fallen tree at something in the distance. Whatever could that be? How did I get there as well? Seems like a lot of things have begun to move and shaken up a bit. Well, I hope so, because, we're at minute 40 at this point. I hope we get to shake up our bones a little bit. Oh, and speaking of movement, the very first frame answers my question to the previous episode. The fate of our beloved, nameless, bounder hobbit. The Nazgul raises his blade and swings it down and almost collides with the camera, and the music crescendos in both terror and mystery. Strings are stringing like a boss from a Souls game had entered the arena, and we can assume that the rusty and tetanus-infected blade of the Nazgul has just decapitated the bounder hobbit. Rip, bounder hobbit, you will be remembered. Well, not by name, because you didn't have one, but I will remember you and your wide agape mouth. We cut to Frodo, who in a panic offers and pretty much hands the ring to Gandalf. He repeatedly says, take it, Gandalf, like it's a hot stone or a bomb about to go off. Very fair reaction. The wisest man you've ever known told you the forces of the evilest of evil is coming to your house to take the evil jewel back to the evil lord. Yeah, you'd want that shit gone as fast as possible. And instead of taking the ring, Gandalf looks surprised, followed up by a hint of fear. He steps back from Frodo as this one continues with his plea that Gandalf must take the ring. Gandalf weakly rebukes that Frodo mustn't offer him the ring, but Frodo persists until Gandalf snaps at him. Don't tempt me, Frodo! And only then does Frodo relent and put the ring down. Why this reaction, all of a sudden? Moments ago, Gandalf took the ring and threw it into the fire. What changed? And why am I asking questions in a tone of voice that clearly indicate I already know the answer to this one? Because it is a great segue to a Reddit post that explains the situation marvelously. So, in r/Lotra, Lotra is short for Lord of the Rings, the user, RetJ333, asked this question while he was listening to the audiobook read by Andy Serkis. I am paraphrasing here, but in short, he asked why Gandalf was okay with taking the ring at one moment, but can't or won't do the next. And one Redditor, Wanderer Falky, explained it so good that I'm quoting that response as an answer to this. It is a matter of intent and ownership. At first, Gandalf only temporarily takes it from Frodo. It's clear to both of them, though Frodo feels some signs of reluctancy. Nobody is being forced. The ring is still Frodo's, and therefore Gandalf has no problem holding it for a few seconds. For the same reason, while nobody could willingly even attempt to destroy the ring by any means, the reason why Gandalf can throw it into the fire is because he clearly knows this would never damage it. He doesn't go with the intent to steal it from Frodo, or to destroy it, so there is no moral conflict. That moment happens so quickly that the ring has no big moral lever to push on. The situation later is different. Frodo literally offers it to Gandalf. The ownership of the ring officially going to Gandalf could have deep consequences. Gandalf would this time face a different moral dilemma, because he wouldn't have to do anything bad to own it. No need to break Frodo's mind to obtain it, so he could rationalize any bad decision by telling himself he didn't do any harm to his friend. In his mind, accepting it would even be helpful towards Frodo, since it would remove his burden, hence his reaction, which is basically the same as Faramir's later in the book. Both have a real understanding of how bad things could go if they were to face a moral dilemma concerning the ring, so they act as much as they can to leave as little a moral lever the ring could push on as possible. Mwah. I couldn't have explained it better, my elf friend. Brava, Wanderer Falky, brava! I know this relates to the book specifically, but it applies itself here as well because it's essentially the same scene, and the same reaction. He has a stubborn refusal on him, but he doesn't keep Frodo in the dark or lets him wonder if he's in trouble because he got yelled at. No. Gandalf too explains himself in detail as to why he can't or more shouldn't take the ring. His expression shifts from sad and tired, and when he looks at Frodo, to complete defiance as his gaze meets the ring. Even now, he seems to be battling his own rationality, which is just, it's brilliant acting from Sir Ian McKellen. Gandalf explains with intense eye contact so that Frodo 100% understands he dare not take the ring, not even to keep it safe, because his wish would be to use the ring for good. But with Gandalf as its bearer, the ring would have gained a great and terrible power to abuse. Because that's what the ring does, because that's what Sauron does, corrupt and twist things so it serves him. Later in the film, Aragorn also explains that only Sauron can truly wield the One Ring. Gandalf is very wise to refuse the ring, even if it would help Frodo, even save him for sure, because as long as Frodo has the ring, his life is in danger. We will get a similar scene of a powerful ring bearer refusing the ring later in this film. In similar, I mean the act of refusal. Mind you, that other person will refuse it with much more drama and effects all around them, more than necessary. But it'll get the point across, why taking the ring would be a bad idea. Write down who you think the other person could be. The winner shall receive a potato. Frodo deduces smartly that the ring cannot stay in the Shire, and he sounds so desperate to get it as far away as possible. And I'd like to point out how he focuses on the Shire, not himself, but the Shire. Frodo early on shows that he puts the safety and protection of the Shire above his own. He'll show that moments later too, but I like the small detail in the dialogue here. Gandalf agrees that the ring cannot stay in the Shire, and he steps a little closer. We cut back to Frodo's face. His expression shifts from fear and panic to one that is more thoughtful. There is a depth, and clearly many thoughts are racing through his mind. Did I leave the oven on? I'm in my own house, so probably I should turn it off soon, or I'll burn the hole down. That'd be very Baggins-like, eh, Bilbo? Oh shit, right, I'm a Baggins, and Bagginsons are not safe in the Shire, where I live. And it finally settles on one that I would call a mix of realization and resolution. Frodo swallows a small clump of nervousness. We cut to his hand, which is holding the ring, and he closes his fist around it, making the decision of carrying the ring himself, far, far away from the Shire. And with a determined look, he asks Gandalf, "What must I do?" Gandalf will say it later, but I will say it now anyway. The bravery of the hobbits is something to be studied. They are no warriors or scouts or magic enchanters, and still they are willing to go out and protect what they love. Or, in Bilbo's case, help people with the places they love. Well, he also went out because an epic adventure was advertised, but you know what I mean. Surely not all hobbits are like this, don't worry, I know about the Sagviles, but there must be something about their normalcy that makes them the perfect candidate for such a quest. We cut to Frodo almost frantically opening a cupboard. We see folded shirts and I believe vests and maybe to see some trousers? But it's too cluttered so I can't really make out which one is which. But given Frodo later pulls out one white shirt, I assume that this is the shirt and vest cupboard. The cupboard itself is made of nice solid wood with pretty engravings of vines and a daisy in the top center of it. And I wondered, because of course I did, when did we start with that? Engraving things. I mean, there must have been a beginning to this. Engravings do not really serve a practical function, unless it's to mark the date or the creator, but stuff like this, with flower motifs? Yeah, no, that is just for making things prettier to look at. So, to the internet machine!
Na 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 na.
The word engraving is the practice of incising a design on a hard, usually flat surface by cutting grooves into something with the burin. A burin is a steel cutting tool with a wooden handle and a steel shaft. I found out that the earliest known engraving is over 430,000 years old, and it was a shell that was made out of carbon. It was a simple zigzag pattern. What exactly this pattern means, we do not know and probably never will. It must have had some sort of meaning, otherwise it wouldn't exist, but we shall never know. But that is just any carving. There are plenty more. Stone carvings, wall carvings, etc. The stone carvings Egyptians were pretty famous for, we all know those. I want to know more about wood carving, since the cupboard here is made of wood. Throughout history, you will find it everywhere. Indigenous people of North America, Polynesians, natives of Guyana, and so on. People carved wood for many different reasons. To tell stories, to put magical protection onto the object, or for simply, like here, beautifying something. In the European Middle Ages, that's between 400 and 1450, goldsmiths used engravings to decorate and inscribe metalwork. It's believed that they did that to record their designs. Since this is such an old technique and method of both preserving ideas and decorating objects, there is no clear origin or creator of this practice. So I can't really tell you who or which culture came up with it first. I'm really sorry. I did try though. But we do know that it is at least over 430,000 years old, and that is quite an age. Speaking of age, it took several to cover this. Let's return to the movie before we die of it. Die of age, not the movie. The movie could never do that to me. We cut a little away and see Frodo in front of that cupboard and see a bit more of its sides. And oh goodness, Frodo truly is Bilbo's nephew. There is no proper order inside it. Clothes are just lying there, unarranged and unkept, as if he just threw them in there, never bothered to fold them. I would scold him for that. If I were a different man, but alas, I do the very same thing. If it doesn't need ironing, and no one will care if it is a crumble mess, in you go! Frodo truly living that single bachelor lifestyle. We see the window behind him and the pale light of the moon is coming in, and under the window there is a beautiful counter made of dark wood. I have no idea what this is. It could be a normal counter for under a window to put, flower pots or freshly baked pies onto. But, how can I call them? Fences put into those counters make it look like it stores something. It could be storage place for firewood, because I think to see the shapes of logs and bark somewhat peering through, but I cannot say for certain. On the right side of the screen we see a counter surrounding another fireplace. Above that hangs a framed sketch of something. I assume it might be an early draft of Bag End. Could be, it has the Hobbit hole roof shape, but at the end of it, of this sketch building, it looks like it has a massive furnace of sorts? Maybe not then. Or it really was a first ever draft by Bilbo's father Bungo, and that idea was just so out there that even Belladonna Took said no, and it was turned into a draft for above the fireplace. The camera follows Frodo as he takes out one white shirt and stuffs it into his backpack. One shirt? Frodo, you will be traveling for days, maybe even weeks. I don't know the exact Hobbit anatomy when it comes to sweating, but I'm fairly certain that you sweat just as much when you go on a hike. So please, pack some more. Of course he is packing more and we just don't see that. I hope. Because a true full-on packing montage would throw us off so hard of the momentum we've been given with Frodo's choice of leaving the Shire. We gotta get moving, we gotta get going, we gotta get out of here, because the Nazgul are coming, and it's been over 40 minutes and we have to leave the Cozy Shire at some point, damn it! Frodo asks where he should go. Gandalf states, once again, the obvious, and says that he must leave the Shire as soon as possible and that he best go to Bree. Bree is the next big town close to the Shire. It's a human settlement that belonged to the Kingdom of Arnor, but I will talk more about Bree when we get to it. Don't worry. I'm actually looking forward to it because Bree has a special little place in my heart. Wait for me, Bree! Gandalf hands Frodo a shirt. Nice! I knew he'd have more than one, but where did he get that? Is Frodo really a massive bachelor that shirts, clean shirts, are just lying around? I mean, I don't judge. I too have one designated chair for all my clean laundry to pile onto. Maybe that chair's also just in that room. Gandalf folds the shirt so it saves some space, and Frodo just rips it away from him, unrolling it completely and just stuffing it into his backpack. I love how Gandalf is composed in this moment of, well, hasteful packing, and Frodo, who has to do the packing, is scatterbrained and just shove things into place, which is fair. I think I'd be doing the very same thing. The Hobbit repeats the word Bree as confirmation to make sure he understood right, and then we cut to Frodo walking through an archway into another room as he asks Gandalf what he is going to do. The camera swooshes back to Gandalf, who comes through the doorway and stands up to his full size, and we get a better shot at the shelf with things inside. Ooh! First, we see some mugs and 2 water jugs on the top shelf, where I wonder how any hobbit would reach that. There must be a stepping stool somewhere around here, right? Because Gandalf can easily reach for it, but he's normal size, and we just saw Frodo pass by it. He just reaches the highest shelf cupboard, but that's about it. Maybe if you tiptoe, you can reach the jugs. I better hope you have a good grip. Next to those, or more so in front of them, there are 3 apples. Just laying there. Not in a bowl or whatever, just on top of a shelf. I assume we are back in the kitchen, because Frodo later wraps and packs a loaf of bread. Spoilers, by the way. But why are they so high up? We know Frodo has bowls around, and if those are full, he just places them onto the table next to the bowl. I would do that too. I mean, I have a bowl for apples, and, you know, I put apples on the side if the bowl is full. Did someone from the decorative department go, "This doesn't look hobbity enough. We need more foods. Put foods everywhere. Best if it is produce that easily bruises, and one should actually eat quickly before it goes bad." Yes, exactly. Put it right there on top of the cupboard. No normal person will ever notice this, and it is simply there to add to the homey feeling of Frodo's home. Well done. Yeah, normal person. I'm not crazy, I promise. My mother had me tested. Below the jugs and questionable apples, we see 2 beautifully designed plates. One is navy blue with hearts and waves between them, and in the center it looks like an orb. A mandala? Maybe it's meant to be Middle-earth? I have no idea, but it looks very pretty. The other is white with a flower plant plastered all over the plate. The petals are of a pale pink and the leaves are close to olive green. We see a lot of pottery and ceramics in this film. It lessens in the later ones, which makes sense because we're in the road or like at war, but you know, I wondered who was the person or the people behind it all. And in my research, I found very interesting things that I would like to share with you. Massive shout out to meshandcloth.substack.com, who is a ceramic artist in Germany. Ja, hallo! Servus, Elisabetta! Who writes articles regarding the topic of ceramic and the process behind it, and made my research so much easier. Thank you so much, Elisabetta. But back to the ceramic of this film and its creator. Well, first we need some context before we get to him, but, you know, cue the rambling! When it came to creating the ceramics, Peter Jackson implored his crew to imagine they were creating real historic objects, things that truly did exist in the world of Middle-earth, and that those have relation to its own legendarium and history. Which is why I assume we saw some vague waves with hearts and an orb at its center on the plate before. It should link to the general history of Arda. The plate in this scene could be telling us several things. Maybe this is a reference to Númenor, the island kingdom, or the Isle of the Teleri elves that was brought from Beleriand to Valinor by Ulmo and his Maya. Those 2 are at least the first things I think of when connecting stuff with the lore and history to the sea of Arda. Jackson's team heavily relied on local craftspeople. Everything was there, and I mean everything. Metal and blacksmiths for weapons, armorers and carpenters and potters as well. Everyone was needed to create so many objects that would later be used for the film. The design team worked with the well-known Tolkien illustrators Alan Lee and John Howe, the latter of which is often a guest at the Swiss Comic Con called Fantasy Basel. I always love going to his presentations. It's very inspiring to listen to his speeches. Now the star of this section, Mirek Smisek. He was a potter born in Czechoslovakia in 1925, and during the Second World War he joined the anti-Nazi resistance, which caused him to be thrown into a labor camp. However, he survived, and in 1948, after a communist coup in his country, he fled and settled in New Zealand. Honestly, incredibly valid reaction to all that. I too would choose exile on an island in the middle of an ocean to get away from everything after all that. Smisek was the first full-time potter in New Zealand in 1956, and when he was asked in 1986 if he ever got tired of doing his craft, he responded like this. Never, never. I love it. What else is more important? I have a desire to create beautiful things that will speak to other people and become part of their lives. This genuinely warms my heart. Especially in a time right now where AI is, well, certainly present and somewhat looming over many of our heads. It is people like Smisek that remind us why the handmade things of humans have value. True value. Fun fact, while I was looking for who made the ceramic and pottery in this film, Google AI told me it was a man called Mirek Smisek. You see the error here? There is no Berek, but there is a Mirek. Always do your research, kids. Please, always do your research. I just wanted to say that Google AI is pretty faulty at times, if not always. Smisek used beehive kilns to create his many jugs, bowls, and plates. Those kilns were, however, moved to another location to create a museum after his death. According to an article at the time, which has gone offline since, Smisek said that he was greatly inspired by English medieval pottery, which makes sense since the book itself is greatly inspired by medieval England and Europe as a whole. Smisek reread the books before creating anything. He wanted to get a fresh approach for everything he was going to make. He dropped everything for this project and devoted himself fully to its creation and completion. And though some in his circle were upset with him for doing this, just you drop everything for this one particular thing, once they learned what he was doing and more importantly what for, they were pretty happy for him. He used local clay in his area in New Zealand and created around 700 objects, pots, jugs, you name it. All that took around 8 months to complete. Why does this sound like no time at all? Like, honestly, it's 700 pieces for 8 months. He made it by hand. That's insane. Smisek poured his heart and soul into this project, like so many others, and it shows. So many of the mugs and jars we see were crafted by him. According to himself, he probably contributed around 70% of all the pottery and ceramic objects in the film. If Smisek also created the decorative plates is nowhere stated. I assume he probably made the plates, but the design on it was probably done by someone of the art department. Elisabetta suggests that these could be pottery of the West Farthing style, and that Bilbo displayed those for their beauty when they were not in use. I agree with you there, Elisabetta, because that would support my theory of the wavy plate being a reference to the Teleri elves, because what is west of the West Farthing? The Grey Havens! And what and who departed from there on an island to Valinor? The Teleri elves! Exactly! We conclude, Mirek Smisek was an incredible artist who brought us the small things that make this film and world so believable. Wherever you are, I hope you know how much your work means to me and millions of others. Anyway, Gandalf then says that he'll be waiting for Frodo at the Inn of the Prancing Pony, a lovely little inn in Bree, to which I will say more when we get to it. This episode is already heavy with random side quests as is. Frodo is packing some apples and asks if the ring will be safe there, but Gandalf doesn't know and says as much. Good on him for not lying, but I'd be surprised if he did lie, just to spare his feelings now. Frodo wraps up a loaf of bread, which looks incredibly dense. Oof, okay. But I imagine it being very nutritious. It has a lot of seeds and probably is made with whole wheat flour. Gandalf continues that he must seek the head of his order and that he will know what to do. And Gandalf looks not entirely confident. He gives us a smile that looks like he's trying to comfort himself rather than knowing that Saruman can actually help him. And this is the first time we are told that Gandalf is member of a certain order. In the books it's mentioned more, of course, but I think that this is the first and last time it is mentioned in the films. As I said in the previous episode, Gandalf is one of 5 wizards who together form, well, the Order of the 5 Wizards. Yeah, after creating the entire world and its laws, the Valar were pretty boring and uncreative later on, it seems. White, grey, brown, and 2 blue. We know practically nothing about the Blue Wizards, only that they probably went east to hinder Sauron there, but given that the East later rises to fight for Sauron, one can assume they failed. Radagast is the brown wizard and is pretty much useless, the embodiment of a hippie hobo who lives and cares only for nature. We see him in the Hobbit books and films, and in the latter he has a more active role and actually has some plot relevance. However, since the film trilogy is not following the book that much at some point, that never really happened in canon, so Radagast too failed in his duty to undermine Sauron and guide the free people of Middle-earth, leaving only Saruman and Gandalf, white and grey. Don't worry, I will talk more about Saruman, aka Kurumo, in another episode. Frodo gives Gandalf a quick nod and moves past him, and in the next scene he is putting on his coat. The wizard tells him to leave the name Baggins behind, smart because the Nazgul are looking for someone named Baggins. He then puts a green cloak onto Frodo and hands him a walking stick. Gandalf tells him to stay off the road, to which Frodo chirps up and says that he can cross country easily enough, and plops the ring with ease into his breast pocket. And just like that, he is ready for the adventure that will claim his life. Will change his life, of course. And as we look over Gandalf's shoulder down onto Frodo, we hear the cozy Shire theme yet again. I assume Gandalf is reminded of Bilbo here at this moment, but also realizes how different Frodo is to his uncle. His eyes are full of warmth and recognition, and you can tell that he really, really cares for him. There is finally a moment to breathe for everyone, both Frodo, Gandalf, and us, the audience. We see them standing opposite of each other as the fire in the fireplace flickers. Gandalf explains that hobbits can still surprise you after 100 years, even when you thought to have learned everything about them within a month, and the two share a warm smile with each other. Aww. And we immediately cut back to tension as we hear rustling outside the open window. On Gandalf's command, Frodo drops face first onto the floor, that's quite impressive, and the wizard then approaches the window with his staff in hand. We cut between him and Frodo as the music has a tension building up and the flower brush rustles once more. We see the brushes made up of a mixture of red, pink and purple flowers. The image is not too clear to really see what they are, but I think the red one could be some type of hibiscus flower, because the petals have this wrinkly appearance like many red hibiscuses have. The pink ones look like small pink roses, but we see them only from the side. But they have this classical rose-like shape. The purple ones could be another collection of lavender, though it is difficult to say with 100% certainty, because again, the image is too unclear, and only visible for a short moment before the shrubbery shakes again, making the image even more unclear. Speaking of shaking, once it does, Gandalf thrusts his staff right into the greenery and hits something with a loud thud sound. Whatever or whoever was hit gives a classical ooh sound, and Gandalf throws away his staff, grabs onto the person in the brush, and throws that someone on the table behind him. It was Sam, who, according to him, was only cutting some leaves and did not eavesdrop at all. Sure, Sam, but damn, he must have amazing hearing. Because we saw him last when he left Frodo at the gate, and then he himself wobbled away because, remember, he's probably slightly tipsy himself, because this is the same night the two had been to the Green Dragon. But he decided to turn around for a reason? Only thing I can explain is that Gandalf was just super loud and that Sam heard that with no problem whatsoever. Because remember, the window was open. Or he was surprised when Frodo turned on all the lights when he returned home, when maybe he would usually just go straight to bed? If it is Gandalf's voice alone that got Sam back to Bag End, that I can buy, but the light alone would be a very weak reason in my opinion. I sure as hell wouldn't check up on my buddy after a night out and he decided to turn on all the lights in his own house. Whatever. Gandalf shouts at Sam and asks if he did eavesdrop on them. He is pretty mad and Sam looks utterly terrified. Understandable if the fire wizard looks at you like you deserve a good grilling. Sam is on the table that was in front of the window and we see a little of the surroundings, but prominent is the carpet with a floral design on the floor behind him. One could make the argument that this was absolutely intentional because Sam is a gardener, you see, and was caught in a flowery bush, and that is why we now see such a carpet. But the truth is probably far simpler. This is a hobbit's house. Hobbits like things that grow. Flowers grow. Put the flower carpet in there. Boom! Interior designing is my passion. I couldn't find any carpet makers or weavers for the film, which is frustrating as fuck. I assume it was part of the art department. All you find though if you type Lord of the Rings carpet maker movie behind the scenes is either the Lord of the Rings wiki, a Reddit post asking where you find Frodo's carpet to buy, and a video list of 25 perfect funny scenes of behind the scenes moment of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Great, those are great things to know I guess, but not the things I want to know! Thanks Google. Thank you for nothing. As Sam explains his reason of late night grass cutting, we cut to Frodo who stands back with an expression that says something like, "Oh no, not again." I can't explain it any other way, but it almost looks like Frodo is used to Sam sneaking around in the garden at night to work on something that could 100% wait until morning. So did he actually come back to cut something? Like, was he saying the truth? I mean, he's not a liar. I can imagine that. What? Really? I make fun of it now, but Sam is not a liar. When he tells Gandalf why he's out there, it seems somewhat truthful to me. I say somewhat, because I can't believe someone to do this late at night. Then again, I don't have a gardener, or know gardeners, so I don't know the passion that goes through someone and the madness that grips you when you have some handiwork to still finish. So, maybe there is something to that. We cut a little back and forth between Sam and Gandalf, and in one cut we see that the left sleeve of Gandalf's robe is incredibly dirty and dusty, probably because he pulled Sam from the greenery outside. However, if we go back a few scenes, we see that the sleeve was actually pretty clean. It has some dirt and dust on it, yes, but from one frame to the next it has seemingly doubled in intensity. Probably someone from the director team went, "Put some more dirt on him. Yes, that is perfect. Thank you, Grand Major." What? No one will ever notice this small change. That's one frame. No one would ever look at this movie frame by frame. I mean, goodness, can you imagine the waste of time? Insane, I tell you. That's madness! Yeah, insane. When Gandalf demands from Sam to tell him what he heard, he basically repeats what we now know. A ring, a Dark Lord, the end of the world, nothing major, normal Tuesday things. His expression changes from wary to almost amused with pity. It looks almost as if Gandalf is enjoying Sam's panic. He raises his eyebrows as Sam asks not to be heard, which must be surprising for him to hear, since all the hobbits sort of see him as this entertainer of sorts. But Sam somewhat recognizes that the wizard is actually powerful and could really hurt someone if he chose to. Sam begs not to be turned into something unnatural. And here, I have to mention another translation change. In the German dub, Sam doesn't directly say that. Instead, he says, "Bitte verwandelt mich nicht in ein Ungeheuer," which would translate to, "Please, don't turn me into a monster." The reason for that change is pretty simple and easy to figure out. The word Ungeheuer has the same number of syllables than the word unnatural. If you translate literally, it'd be unnatürliches, and that would be one syllable too much. Once again shows that translating is not just translating, but also making sure the pacing of speech remains relatively the same. To Sam's plea, Gandalf responds with a wide-eyed "No?", which he stretches for some time. It almost sounds like a question, and he thinks on what to do with Sam. He looks over to Frodo, who is smiling with a look of pity for his friend, and I'm sure Gandalf gets the idea at this very moment. He looks back to Sam and he leans in really close and says, almost whispering, "I thought of a better use for you." We cut and are now outside. A new day has begun and the sun is rising behind a wall of clouds. The black silhouettes of Gandalf, Frodo and the wizard's horse are seen, and we hear Gandalf call after Sam to keep up. And then Sam clumsily rushes into frame with an overloaded backpack, and we hear the clanking of pots and pans. Instead of becoming something unnatural, Gandalf had made Sam Frodo's travel companion to ensure he gets to Bree safely. I would ask why it's now dawn when the last scene we were in was, in the middle of the night, but hey, they probably had to get to Sam's house and get his travel gear, and I'm certain he made a fuss about that he bring his own pots and pans. Fun fact, in the book it happens a little different, because of course it does. Frodo leaves Bag End with the fake reason that he was moving to Buckland, because he knows that as long as he stays in the Shire, he is a danger to the Shire and all the hobbits. He did actually sell Bag End to the Sagwal Baggins. I'm sure Lobelia was thrilled, but the real reason only he and his companion hobbits knew. You see, it is not only Sam that goes with Frodo, but also Pippin and Merry. The four hobbits do intend to meet with Gandalf and Bree, and from there, together, they would travel to Rivendell, but things come up, as we learn in another episode. The reason as to why both Pippin and Merry are even coming with Frodo is simple. They are his best friends and cousins as well. And in the Shire, you stick together. Well, when it comes to Merry and Pippin, that is. They're also just agents of chaos and Shabbernack. So you can always assume that they will jump at the chance for more mischief. We cut to the three walking through a green forest, and this could be the beginnings of the Old Forest, maybe. It certainly looks old and dark, as well as gloomy. The Old Forest is kind of a dangerous place in which trees can come to life and murder you if they feel like it. Well, that is if you go hard off-road. But for filming locations, I couldn't really pin it down. There were several woods used throughout the filming of the trilogy. This could be the Hobbiton Woods on the trail of Mount Victoria, where the hobbits later also hide from the Nazgul. It is also possible that this is bits of the Trollshaw forest set in the Mangatuaki rocks, or even the Fangorn forest in Fiordland National Park in the very south of New Zealand. Plenty to choose from, and no idea where to actually place it. So I will take a guess and say that this is the Hobbiton Woods, somewhere on Mount Victoria. Since we just left Hobbiton, this would make the most sense narrative-wise. Gandalf warns the hobbits that the enemy has many spies, birds and beasts. He says this while the echoing humming choir of the One Ring is heard in the background. Once again, we see the great use of the scale actors to show that the hobbits are indeed much shorter than regular people. Since their faces are not in focus at all, it is an easy thing to show them with our big man Gandalf on screen at the same time. The wizard turns to Frodo and asks if it is safe, and we cut to Frodo, who looks up with a look of worry and uncertainty. He places his hand onto the breast pocket the ring is in. As he does, we hear a heavy and distant boom in the background, to signal to us, the audience, even more, that this is a mighty and dangerous thing that needs to be kept hidden away at all costs. Thank you, movie. I didn't know. Thank you for clarifying that yet again. Gandalf tells Frodo to never put it on, because then the agents of Sauron will be drawn to its power. If that is the case, and putting the ring on is similar to a homing signal, why didn't Sauron or his Nazguls for that matter never sense it when Bilbo wore it? And I'm not even talking about him using it during his birthday, though I'll get to that, but also in the events of The Hobbit. Well, the answer to that is never stated or given in universe, but I have some explanations regarding that. Number 1, in The Hobbit, the ring Bilbo finds was originally meant to be just a random magic ring, not the ring. The entire concept of the Rings of Power and Sauron's ring was created many years after The Hobbit had been written and published. The Lord of the Rings was a sequel to The Hobbit, and for that we needed a good connecting piece, and thus did the random magic ring that turns you invisible become the One Ring of Power, when Tolkien semi-retconned it to be just that. Keep in mind, Tolkien never wrote The Hobbit with the intent to spawn this entire franchise and lore-heavy world. He wrote it for his children, and once they were older, he wrote a continuation fitting for their age as well. Remember, The Hobbit is, for all intents and purposes, a children's story. But okay, that is our real-life reason as to why Sauron didn't notice Bilbo during the events of The Hobbit. But what could be a lore reason, since the magic ring is now the One Ring, and has been for many years now, because there have been reprints of The Hobbit where the description of the ring had been slightly altered to fit more in line with The Lord of the Rings. Well, Sauron was pretty weakened at that moment in time, and lived as a being known as the Necromancer in the forest of Mirkwood in Dol Guldur. His entire focus was on rebuilding his strength and body after the defeat with the battle against the Last Alliance. So that could be one lore reason for that. However, there is also another possibility. Sauron is not all-knowing and doesn't sense everything at once. No, that would make him way too powerful. However, remember how he made the rings of power for the 3 races of Middle-earth, humans, elves and dwarfs? The hobbits were never in that equation, and neither was their home, their shire. If Sauron didn't know about them, which honestly could have been the case since the hobbits do keep to themselves, then he would never look that way. I can imagine that Sauron can pick up certain things at places he actively looks at or scribes for, or however he does it. I mean, in the film, he is one massive eye that can pierce through stone and flesh. So he probably just looks to some point in the distance, focuses and senses vaguely what's going on. So in that case, it makes sense that he never senses Bilbo because he never looks towards the Shire, because again, why would he? And maybe that is what Gandalf knows as well. He knows that Sauron is actively turning his attention to the Shire. If Frodo were to wear the ring right now, he would be sensed and be in even greater danger. So that is the other reason how I explained to myself that Sauron never picked up Bilbo's essence using the ring throughout The Hobbit and in the previous episodes of this podcast series. Yeah, where were we again? Oh, right, in the forest! Gandalf's parting words are that the ring will do anything in its power to return to its master, for it wants to be found. We get another close-up shot of Frodo's breast pocket and we hear another distant boom as we look at it. We get it, this is an object of doom and boom and a heavy burden. Goodness, Peter Jackson, calm down. We cut to Gandalf mounting his horse and riding off towards the camera, which is then going above him, and he leaves the hobbits behind. I was searching for the name of this particular horse, but sadly couldn't find anything. I did find the name of the horse actors of both Aragorn's horse and later Gandalf the White's horse, because those have more important roles to play in the story. So sadly no name for brown horse here. Tim the horse. Now we got one. I wonder how long it'll take AI to mess information up now with that in its database. The camera moves somewhat around Frodo and Sam, and Frodo is visibly scared as he hears a thunderous sound in the distance and the cries of birds. Remember how just a few moments ago Gandalf said birds are also spies of the enemy? Yeah, I get the paranoia, I do. Meanwhile, Sam looks pretty unbothered and approaches Frodo silently, giving him this classical expression one bro gives to another, which could be a universal sign for, I don't know either, bro. And we cut to them walking across a field with a farmhouse not far away from them. It is a beautiful day, the sun is shining, and it's all in all a gorgeous location to be at. Once again, the Shire really showing the beauty of a peaceful countryside. This shot and the next were probably taken where the Hobbiton set was built, in the area of Matamata. I hope I said that right. Because if you look it up, it is exactly this. Green hills with pockets of small forests scattered throughout, and some single trees here and there. It looks very similar to what Switzerland looks like, which makes sense since Tolkien did go to Switzerland at age 19 and was inspired by its natural beauty and hills and mountains. Coming from the somewhat flat UK, which has none of that, I can imagine that this was an eye-opening experience to him. His trip to Switzerland was certainly a massive deal, since it did shape how both Rivendell and Shire would eventually look like. The next scene, we see Frodo and Sam walking on some stones in front of a waterfall, and the next they hike across another wide open field with mountains and forests seen in the distance. And I, a man from Switzerland, would easily be fooled if you told me that this was just Switzerland. It looks just like it. Hell, there are places not far from where I live that look exactly like it. In this shot, we can see Frodo and Sam better than before, and also how they are packed. Frodo is orderly, his backpack filled to the brim probably, but closed, and his cloak is rolled up and neatly tied on top of it. Sam, though, is a walking kitchen set and looks overcome, but his cloak too has been rolled up and put on top of his backpack, but there's also something that hangs at the bottom of his backpack. I think that might be his bedroll? That's an older version of a sleeping bag, basically. Around the backpack hang pots and pans, and I think also some tweezers for grilling things over an open flame. He very much looks like a dad who over-prepared for the coming barbecue. But that makes me wonder, where is Frodo's bedroll then? Did he forget it? No, I can't imagine that. They prepared all night and packed all night. Maybe Sam has it too. Maybe that's why he's overloaded, because he's carrying a lot of Frodo's stuff as well. He is, after all, physically stronger than Frodo, with him having a labourer's job after all. We cut to the two hobbits walking through a farmer's field with a scarecrow in it. But the thing doesn't do its job at all, and there are 3 crows just chilling right on top of it. Great. Who even came up with the idea of putting something like that in a field to scare birds away? Oh well, that's actually quite easy. The Egyptians! Some sources say that it was them who came up with the idea to place a decoy in the fields to scare off birds from the freshly planted seeds. However, they didn't always look like that. Originally, they placed wooden frames with nets all throughout the fields, and people would hide close by. And then, when a bird would land, the people hiding would snatch the birds up with the nets placed on the wooden frames and kill them. And throughout time, the scarecrow would continuously change shape and shift in appearance until we get the one we know today. However, scarecrows rarely work in the long run, because since they are static objects that don't react to anything, most birds learn that they can do whatever they want as long as no moving scarecrow is around. The moving scarecrow would be a real human in this case. Oh well, this scarecrow certainly scares me, with its utter failure in existence. The field we are in could very much belong to the Alexander family, which owned the grassland the movie used for the Shire location. And since we are still in the Shire, it's highly likely we are still in that area. Because remember, it's a massive area. The area is 1,200 acres big. We see wheat that goes up to Sam's knees and a green plant surrounding Frodo in the field next to it. I believe that this could be a sweetcorn field, because they have the sprouting top that spreads like a fan. I came across a study, an article, research, I don't know, from manawatuns.co.nz, which shows the economic influence and success of the sweetcorn export from New Zealand to other places in the world. So it looks like that sweetcorn must be something easy to plant and harvest for them to make such a profit. So that this could be a sweetcorn field is actually quite plausible. Now let's return to the film, which is actually not about farm equipment or crops. Sam says that this is it, and Frodo, confused, turns around and asks, "What is it?" And Sam says that if he were to take one more step, he'll be the farthest away he's ever been from home. We zoom out and see all of the fields around the two hobbits. It's a mix of green and brown, yellow, sweet corn and wheat, as much as your heart desires. There is a farming house in the distance, and white smoke is coming out of its chimney. It's a small thing, of course, there in the background, but it adds to the feeling of this world being alive and real, with real characters living in it. Frodo approaches Sam with the warm Shire theme accompanying him. He suggests Sam to come along and waits for him to do so. Sam looks down, thinking about this next step, and crosses the threshold of this being the furthest away he's ever been from home, and his expression almost says, "I can't believe I'm doing this." And Frodo, with a proud smile, puts his hand onto Sam's back and they continue to walk together. He then quotes Bilbo to comfort Sam a bit. And the quote goes, "It's a dangerous business, Frodo, going out your door. You step onto the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there is no knowing where you might be swept off to." And we hear this quote said by Bilbo, Ian Holm, himself as we continue to follow the two hobbits from the fields to a deeper forest, where Frodo sits between two trees and Sam is cooking something over a fire. It's a nice quote for sure, but it would excite me more than calm me down. It points to adventure and undiscovered secrets for me, but maybe that was Frodo's intention? Seeing Sam unsure about all of this, he tries to excite him for what lies ahead. That's also one way of doing it. Or maybe he does try to calm him down by saying, "We know where we are going, and we are being careful already, so no worries. We won't be swept away by our own feet like Bilbo was." Both is applicable here, I think. Whatever, it certainly keeps Sam going, and that is all that matters. We cut to a frying pan over an open flame, and oh my gosh, this looks delicious. Oh my god, my mouth is getting wet just looking at this. And even writing about this, and now recording it, whew, it's getting warm in here. We have 3 massive sausages, 2 halves of a tomato, and what I believe to be several slices of ham? Maybe? And oh, it's all drenched in grease and fat and butter, and it's just, it's going to be delicious. After a long day of walking and hiking across the country, this is better than sex. What? You know I'm right. Of course, this only goes for us meat eaters. If you're vegetarian or vegan, you're going to starve here. This is a medieval world after all. But since Sam is the one doing the cooking, we can assume that all those materials for that is from his backpack. We cut to Sam in question, who is poking and moving around the meat in the pan as he holds a pipe and smokes some weed. Of course he does. No one is surprised. As I said in a previous episode, we will never escape the pipes. Thank the beloved professor for that if you have any complaints. Sam has put away his cloak and jacket and has his shirt sleeves rolled up to not melt when dealing with the fire. On the left side of the screen we can see the bundles of the hobbits. At least there is a shape of brown and green that looks like it could be their backpacks and cloaks. And one of their walking sticks is leaning against the massive tree trunk. The camera moves upwards and we see Frodo sitting on the tree leisurely smoking his pipe and looking into the far distance. Nice that Frodo does not help at all when it comes to cooking. Maybe he can't. The class divide is very present here. Or maybe Sam is very particular about how he wants his meat. Anyway, as Frodo puffs out a white cloud, I wondered if the actors of the movies actually smoked those pipes. You know, if those were functional and all. And to what I could find out, yes, they were. They had no nicotine in it to prevent any future addictions, but the smoke and puffs we see are mostly real. Save for the ones we saw with Gandalf when he blew magical ships into smoke rings. Then we hear voices in the distance, and they are not part of the soundtrack, but to the actual environment, because Frodo hears them too, and turns his head towards their general direction. He looks left and right and appears surprised, but not scared, which makes sense, because remember, Frodo is able to read and speak Elvish, probably with a heavy accent, but still. What would an accent of the Shire be like? The same as anyone, I guess? Frodo then calls out to Sam and looks into the distance again, as to say, "Listen!" And Sam does, and now too seems to notice the voices from afar. He even stopped smoking his pipe, and as we know, this is the universal sign of something deserves my full attention. We see Frodo's excited face and he says, "Woodelves!" And that is an exciting thing. The elves are a very elusive people and never really interact with others during the Third Age, so that Frodo and Sam can get a glimpse of them is understandably cause for excitement. In the books, Sam is a massive elf fan and desperately wants to see the elves for himself, and most of all, Rivendell, due to Bilbo's storytelling of the place. The two hobbits rush through the forest, not too far away from their camp. It looks very similar to what we've seen before. They pass high grass and bushes and come to a halt to a fallen tree which has been positioned wonderfully, so two people of average height can lean on it and look over at something from a safe distance. My, nature works in mysterious ways. Their mouths are open as they stare at what is in front of them. There is wonder, there is awe, and what exactly do they see? An elvish a cappella band? A naked ritual dance? Maybe it is the famous Glorfindel on his horse Asphalloth. Well, we might get all these questions answered in the next episode, because we have reached the 5-minute mark and the end of this episode. And I hope you enjoyed. Even though this episode was number 9, which would lead itself so excellently to the Nazgul and the entire 9 shtick, we only ever saw them at the beginning of this episode when they killed the Bounder. Rip. But regardless, I am happy with all the things I was able to dig up, especially about Mirek Smisek. That was incredibly fascinating and teaching for me. I never bothered much with pottery, because I have 2 left hands and I'm pretty bad at most things handcrafty. But I loved to read about this man's passion and the love for his craft. Also, we finally left the Shire. Yay! The plot is finally moving and we're getting somewhere. I mean, we are still pretty safe and nothing bad has happened yet, but that will all change in the next episode, and I'm very excited to have a closer look at all those little details next time. The next episode is going to be an interesting milestone, episode 10. We are entering double digits, exciting times. It will also be the first episode in the new apartment for me, so that'll be a new adjustment. I will probably need more than just 1 month to make the next episode. You know, a move takes time and all. I hope you had fun and learned something new, or simply enjoyed hearing things you knew much about already. Maybe you were able to finish the chores you were putting off, or managed to go on that walk while I was rambling in the background. Whatever the case, I thank you for listening and hope to see you in the next episode of The Lord of the Ring, The Fellowship of the Ring podcast. Take care.